Hello, welcome to our first lesson in this TOEFL iBT preparation course. And let's see what we will have for this lesson. Today, we are going to have in-depth introduction to the TOEFL iBT test. So let's take a look at what we have for today's lesson. So here are our learning goals. First of all, we will have a general introduction to the TOEFL. And then we will get to know in depth with the TOEFL iBT test, which is the type of TOEFL that we will focus on for this course. And of course, the most important one, the general strategies to help you prepare to tackle the TOEFL iBT test. Are you ready? Let's start. So, what is the TOEFL? TOEFL stands for Test of English as a Foreign Language. So, what is this? Well, this is one of the most recognized English proficiency tests in the world. This is on par with the IELTS test. And the TOEFL is accepted in over 11,000 organizations worldwide and in 180 countries, making it practically accepted in any parts of the world. It is a standardized test to measure or check or see your English language ability, especially if you are a non-native speaker. Now, non-native speaker is someone who was not born learning English as their first language or grew up with English as their first language. And many people take the TOEFL for many reasons, of course, but these are the three common reasons. First one is to apply to an English-speaking university in an English-speaking country, like the USA, the UK, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and other English-speaking countries. Many countries also use TOEFL for visa application to see if the applicant has the English skill to be able to communicate when they enter their country. And of course, also immigration, which is a bigger or a higher scale of visa application, right? All right, now, what are the main types of the tests? So the TOEFL originally had many types, but as you know, as the TOEFL developed, now there are only two main types. The first one is the paper-based test, or PBT. And as its name suggests, it is conducted using paper, and pencil. And this is only mainly offered or given in the locations or countries where internet is not very available. Okay. Now, the second type, and this is the more preferred one, many countries, they only accept and administer or give this kind of test because their internet is, good enough to administer or to give the test. So the internet-based test, or IBT, is the most commonly taken type of TOEFL in the world nowadays. All right, and as I mentioned in the beginning, the internet-based test, or IBT, will be the focus of our course. All right, so let's move on. Now, who takes the TOEFL iBT? So among other kinds of students or backgrounds of people who take the TOEFL iBT test, these four are perhaps the common ones. So the first one is students who, as I already explained briefly, students who are planning to study at a university abroad, especially in an English-speaking university. And it is also common for students or workers, professionals, who would like to work abroad or who would like to stay for considerably long time in an English-speaking country such as the America. They will require you to show your English proficiency proof if you would like to apply for the visa. And then also a very popular one, people who are applying for scholarship or certification. And so they need to show that they have the English ability to be, of course, shortlisted. And then the last one over here is showing that the TOEFL iBT test is also beneficial for English language learners who would like to see or to track their English learning progress. Okay, all right. So in our lesson today here, we are going to focus on some specific, what is that, discussions. The first one is the key features of the test. What are the features? And then we will take a look at the test procedure and the format of the tests, like how many questions there are, how many parts or sections. And then, of course, we will learn and study the characteristics of the questions and how they run the tests administratively. And finally, what's the score like? What's the score range? And what will the score mean? Which is what the descriptors refer to. All right. So these are the key points that we will go over for our lesson today. So start with, what exactly does the TOEFL iBT assess or check from a test taker? Now, the test is mainly checking your skill in speaking and understanding the language. And this, of course, will include the 4 language skills, which is the reading, the speaking, listening, and the writing skills. Now, besides checking your 4 language skills proficiency, the TOEFL iBT also wants to see your academic skills. Okay, and what academic skills means here is your ability to succeed if you were to study in an English environment. And this includes your ability to write an essay in English, your skill, your comprehension in following a lecture or participating in a discussion in, for example, a classroom setting in English. All right, so let's get to know the TOEFL iBT. So what are the key features of the test? What you need to remember is that the test will measure the 4 language skills for effective communication, especially in the academic settings, like what I explained about conducting a study in an English-speaking university. And then it is very, the test is very geared towards your communication skills. So not just focusing on your grammar skills or your vocabulary knowledge, but more about how you use those grammar rules and those vocabulary items so that you can communicate effectively. All right. Okay. Now, continuing with the key features. So, what's a very unique and what is that? A very important feature from the TOEFL iBT is that it is one of the tests that use the integrated task type of question. All right. And this kind of task in the test will assess your ability in using different language skills towards one purpose. okay, which is communication. So this, for example, can be shown when you are asked to read something, and then listening to a different source of information about about the relevant topic that you read, and then you have to speak about it. Okay, so through this kind of integrated task, you are showing that you have all the necessary skills to not just understand the information, but also to uh, relay or convey the conversation to other people, especially in academic setting. Keep a note on that. Okay, and then another example is when you are asked to listen to a source of information and then you have to speak about it. And another format is by reading, listening, and then writing in response to a question instead of speaking about it. Okay, so that's an important key feature of the test. Now, let's see the test procedure. The TOEFL iBT is administered via the internet through secure administration, of course. And then there are instructions given at every beginning of the part to help you understand what to do. Note-taking is not just allowed, but actually encouraged. Okay, so you are recommended to take notes, especially in the listening part, because there will be a lot of information, which if you only depend on your memory, it's very, very difficult to remember all of them. And in terms of the accents that you will hear, or the accents that are accepted in the test, it will be any kinds of accents, which is, of course, intelligible. Intelligible means can be understood, and this is usually following one of the common native English speaker accents, and this can be from the US or the UK or Australia or New Zealand, South Africa, Scotland, etc. Okay. You will be provided with headphones and microphone for the test, especially for the listening and for the speaking part or sections of the test. And more about the test procedure. So speaking about the scoring, your speaking score will be based on the assessment by the ETS raters, or people who check your response. And so your response will be recorded on the computer in the test. And then the recording will be sent to ETS to be checked and scored, of course. Similar to the writing response, so the test takers, which is you here, will type your response on the computer, and then they will send your essay to ETS. Now, for the reading and listening section, since all of the questions are mostly multiple choice questions, or which already have their answers predetermined, so you will be able to see your direct score after the sections. Okay, but this will be, of course, unofficial. For the official ones, you need to wait for the official score released by ETS. And this will include not just your reading and listening scores, but also the speaking and writing. All right, here's more about the test procedure. So yeah, again, the speaking and writing scores will be available after the test is checked and administered. And then you will then be provided with your scores both online and by mail. Okay, so that's the test procedure. Let's move on and talk about the test format or the structure. You can see the chart showing how the test is formatted. All right, so as we have discussed earlier, there are 4 sections, starting from the reading, followed with the listening, and then there is a 10-minute break before the speaking and writing starts. There are some details here about the content of each of the section and also the timing. So for overall of the test, you will take around 3 hours approximately to complete the test. And about the types of questions and content, we'll have a look at them in more details later. And here's another unique and interesting fact about the TOEFL iBT. So the ETS always includes either one extra passage or one extra passage in the reading, or one extra lecture and conversation in the listening. And they do this for experimental purposes, to get feedback about their, of course, the TOEFL iBT test itself. All right, moving on. So another feature that will also affect the format of the test is the toolbar. Since you are taking the test on a computer, then you will be provided with an application or a software. And this software comes with a toolbar to help you during the test. So this is an example in the reading section with all the features on the toolbar. And then for the listening, it will change slightly. Okay, as you can see right away, the difference here there's a back feature, and there's no back feature. This indicates that in the listening you won't be able to return to the previous questions, whereas the reading will allow you to do that. So let's see what the functions of these features are. The review feature in the reading section will be able to show you an overview or a preview of all of the questions in the section, and you will be able to go to any of the questions there to check or to revise or edit your answers. And then there is a clock feature to help you keep track of the time, making sure that you answer the questions before the time runs out. The volume, of course, will help you to adjust the level of the sound. And then the help feature in both of the sections will give you additional information. And speaking about this one, the information will mainly a recap or a summary or additional information about the instructions, in case you're wondering whether you can get additional help in answering the questions. And then the next and back buttons to navigate through the questions. And again, be careful, the back button will only be available in the reading section. Okay, let's see what we have next. So next we will have an overview on the sections of the TOEFL iBT and the characteristics of the questions. Let's get down to it. So starting from the first section in the test, the reading section. This section will check or assess your academic reading skills. And most of the questions are in multiple choice format, excluding a couple of types that are slightly different, but basically it's also asking you to, to choose the answers from the given options. And from each section of the reading test, you will get either 3 passages or 4 passages. Remember, if it's a longer format with 1 experimental extra passage, then you'll get 4. Okay, but if it's the shorter format, you'll get only 3 passages. And these passages will then have 10 questions about it. Okay. Each of the passage will be around 700 words. And you will have 54 minutes to complete the short version with 3 passages and 72 minutes for the longer version with 4 passages. So what are the passages mainly, about, or the context or the place or the setting where these passages come from? Well, the passages in the reading section of TOEFL iBT are usually taken from college textbooks, especially college textbooks in introductory level of a major or a subject of study. So, for example, those kinds of books that you will find during your first semester or second semester in your undergraduate study. Okay. All right. And again, the subjects will be various. It can be from the science, what is that, faculties, arts, history, all sorts of subjects. Okay, here's a snapshot of the reading passage, how it looks like in the test. So as you can see, it's around 700 words, and you will be able to scroll down and up to see the whole passage easily during the test. And then after you see the whole passage in the beginning of the section, you will then see the questions on the left side next to the passage. All right, now that's about the reading section. Let's move on now and focus on the second section of the test, which is the listening section. Similar to the reading section, the listening section also wants to see your listening skills in an academic setting or environment. And this includes how well you understand an academic lecture. It's the kind of lecture that you get in a university class. And then how well you understand longer conversations in also academic settings. This can be, for example, like a conversation between 2 students talking about an assignment from their professor, or a librarian talking with a student about the procedure of borrowing books in the library at the university. Very academic topics of conversation. And this will have natural speech used in the conversation. And natural speech means the kinds of speech that is different from what you may have usually heard during your English language learning. During your learning in the past, perhaps you have heard many conversations from the books were very perfect. There were no us or ers or any hesitations by the speakers. Now, in the TOEFL iBT listening section, you will hear something different. It will be something that is very natural. It's like a real conversation in real life where people often hesitates or lose their train of thoughts during the conversation. Therefore, they will and r's or us during the conversation. So you need to anticipate that. You need to be ready to hear that kind of speech. You may take notes, and again, you will be encouraged or recommended to take notes. The questions are mostly multiple choice, same as the reading section. And there will be 3 lectures with around 500 to 750 words of content. And it will be in the duration of 4 to 5 minutes. And that's for the short format. For the longer format, you will hear 4 lectures. And from each lecture, you will get 6 questions following after the lecture, all right? And then for the conversations, for the short format, you'll get 2, lasting around 3 minutes with around 12 to 25 exchanges. Exchanges means the turns that the speakers take during the conversation. And from each, you will get 5 questions. In the longer format, you will get 3 conversations. So that's about the format of the listening section. Oh, don't forget, for the shorter format, it will take around 41 minutes, and the longer format will be around 57 minutes. So let's see some snapshots from the listening section. So here, this is an example of the conversation material. So you will listen to the conversation, and the progress of the conversation in terms of the length will be indicated with the bar. And then there will be an accompanying image to help you visualize the conversation. And then after the conversation is over, you'll be given the questions. And here is an example of the lecture type. So you will hear a lecture, and sometimes in the lecture, you will also hear not just the lecturer or professor speaking, but student responding. Then after the lecture is over, you will then be given the question. And remember, you won't be able to listen to either the conversation or the lecture again. It is only played once. All right, so that's the listening section. Now, how about the third section of the TOEFL iBT, which is the speaking section? Again and again, it will check your ability in using English in academic setting. And in this section, it will be about your speaking skills. There will be 4 tasks or questions, and it will take around 17 minutes for all of them to be completed. Here is a chart of the whole section. So as you can see, 4 tasks, and in 2 categories. So the independent task with only 1 question, and the integrated tasks with 3 questions. You might ask, what's the difference between independent and integrated tasks? We will discuss this in more details as we go along with our course, but I will give you a brief explanation about the difference between these 2 types of tasks. The independent task will ask for your independent opinion. Okay, so independent here means you independently responds using your own opinion. And this task will have its own timing. Okay. And as you can see from the description here, you are asked to make and defend a choice, a personal choice. Again, independently, choosing your own ideas and opinions. And it's usually between two contrasting behaviors, ideas, or things or actions to do. Okay, we will see example questions as we go along with the course again. Now, the integrated task, on the other hand, will ask you to use not just speaking skill, but to use also your reading and listening skills to understand sources of information before then to speak about it. Okay, and as you can see, the timing is mainly with two formats, with the second and the third integrated task giving you 30 seconds of preparation and then 60 seconds of response time. Same with the third task. The fourth task will ask you to summarize an information given in a listening passage. Okay. And then you will be given 20 seconds to prepare and 60 seconds to respond. So that is slightly different from the third and the second integrated tasks types. All right. Again, don't worry. If you want to read the descriptions, you may pause the video and read it in detail, but we will still go over them as we get to the strategies to deal with the speaking task in our later discussions. So here's an example of independent task. This is usually the first questions of the four. And again, you'll be asked to pick a side and then defend it using your own personal experience or ideas or opinions. The integrated tasks, as seen in the example here, will ask you to use, again, the three skills: reading, listening, and then your speaking skill at the end. So you will need to read a short passage, and then you will hear either a conversation or a lecture in response or in relation to the passage. Before then, you are asked to maybe report or whatever the question instructs you to do. And don't forget about the timing. Okay, now the last section of the TOEFL iBT, which is the writing section. This section also would like to assess your writing skill, and still in academic context. And there will be 50 minutes for this section for you to answer 2 questions or 2 tasks. And these tasks are integrated writing and independent writing, so similar to the speaking section. But this time, it ends with your writing instead of your speaking. Here is the chart of the task section. So as you can see, task 1 will be an integrated writing task where you will read something and then listen something in connection to the reading and then writing about the information from both sources. Okay, there are more pieces of information given here that you can read while pausing the video, perhaps. And you will have 20 minutes to do this before you move on to the second task. In the second task, it will ask you again to give your independent ideas or responses. So you will be given a question, and then you will be asked to maybe choose a side, whether you agree or disagree with the statement, or but mainly, yes, mainly for you to show preference over one to the other. Okay, and you will have 30 minutes to complete this, making the overall section lasting 50 minutes in total. Here's an example of how the integrated task of the writing section looks like. So you will be reading something, a source of information, and you will hear a lecture or a conversation in relation to the passage, and then you will then have to write to summarize or report the two sources of information, highlighting the key ideas mentioned in both sources. Okay. Now, the independent task, the second task in the writing section. So it's fairly simpler than the integrated task. What you need to do is you simply need to respond to the instruction, to the prompt or the questions from the section. So here the example is, do you agree or disagree with the statement? Then you will be then responding to the task in the given space, following the directions. There will be a timer provided to help you monitor or keep track of your time. Now, we will go over the scoring system and the descriptors of the TOEFL iBT, so that you will know, after you take the test, you will know how to understand what the score means, what it says about your proficiency level in the English language. So first of all, let's take a look at the score scales, or the range of the score for the TOEFL iBT. So it will provide you with scores in your 4 skills: the reading, listening, speaking, and your writing. Each of the section will be scored from 0 to 30. 0 is, of course, the lowest, and 30 being the highest. And then there will be a total score. And this total score is simply the sum of the 4 scale scores from your 4 skills. So, what are the levels that the score will indicate? In the reading and listening scale, you will be categorized into 4 levels, starting from the below low intermediate as the lowest level up to the highest, the advanced level. And you can be qualified in such a level according to the score that you obtain. If it falls in the range of between 4 to 17, then that means that your reading skill is in the low intermediate level. And same thing with the listening section. The descriptor shows that if your score is between 22 to 30, then you will be categorized in the advanced level. Now, the speaking and writing skills have their own leveling system, and it's not very different. The difference is perhaps just one additional level. So it goes up from below basic to basic, low intermediate, high intermediate, and advanced. And this again will depend on the score that you obtain from the sections. Okay. Now, what do those levels mean? What does advanced mean, or basic or low intermediate? What do they mean? Well, in the reading section, if your score is from 24 to 30, then it shows that you have an advanced level in the reading skill. And this shows that you can fully understand academic passages in English at the introductory university level. Okay. And on the contrary, if your level is below low intermediate, that shows that you have not demonstrated the proficiency enough to get you to the low intermediate level. And in the low intermediate level, it shows that you can only understand some main ideas and important information presented in the passages. Okay. And it shows that your overall understanding of the passage is limited. It means you only understand a portion, maybe a third or 15% of the passage. Okay. And it shows also that you have difficulty following a longer or more complex parts of the passage. And you can also learn about what the high intermediate level means through the description. So that's about the reading section. How about the listening section? In the listening section, if your score is between 17 to 21, then that categorizes your level into the high intermediate level. And being in high intermediate will mean that you typically understand the main ideas and important details of conversation and lectures in academic settings. Okay. And these kinds of listening may include difficult vocabulary, abstract or complex ideas, complex sentence structures, various use of intonation, so etc. So you can see that this is not an easy type of listening material. Now, what makes high intermediate falls short from advanced is that test takers who fall in this level shows that their ability to understand information in longer conversation or lectures will show some difficulty. Okay, especially if the information is not emphasized. And that is the difference between this level, high intermediate, and advanced. In the advanced, the test taker that score in this range will not show any difficulty in this manner. So that's the difference between the descriptor, the levels here. In the low intermediate, what makes it slightly or even lower than high intermediate is the test taker's difficulty in understanding a large amount of information. So not just some, but a lot. That's the difference. Now, moving on to the speaking section. What does it mean if you have the basic level? If your level is in the basic category, then that means you are able to communicate, but with limited information. Communicate limited information. And this is only about familiar or everyday topics. The kind of topic of conversation or communication that we usually talk about in our day-to-day life. In the low intermediate, the test taker improve in the way that they can talk about general or familiar topics with relative ease, but it's only about general and familiar topics. topics. And if they can talk about less familiar topics, that will take them higher to the high intermediate level. So as you can see here, it includes more complex or academic topics. Okay. Now, how about the advanced level, the highest level? It explains here that the test taker shows that they can not just discuss more complex or academic topics, but also communicate them with fluency and efficiency. Okay, so that's what makes the difference. And the last one is the writing section, similar to the speaking section, but of course, the format of the skill or the response will be in writing. Okay, and we can see the key differences here are shown by the keywords confidence and clarity, okay, which is lacking in the high intermediate level. And then in the low intermediate level, same general or familiar topics, but once it's getting more complex and academic, it is proven to be a challenge for this level. And then the basic one is only in very basic information type of topic. Okay. So what should you do as a strategy to prepare yourself for the TOEFL iBT? Before the test day, make sure you familiarize yourself with the test. Find out inside out about the test. And this, for example, is by looking at the format, the structure, the number of the questions, the timing, the types of questions, everything. Make sure that you know the test very well. And then you can learn from others' test experiences, of course. Don't forget that the test is basically aiming to assess your language skills. So you should improve them. And they are not just your speaking, but also your reading, listenings, and writing. And all of these will be connected to, of course, the linguistic parts of the language, which is the grammar, the tenses, the syntax, or how the words are arranged in a sentence. And then absolutely the vocabulary, especially the academic ones, because remember, everything on the TOEFL iBT is all about academic. And don't forget your pronunciation. Now, during the test day, you can do these strategies and also apply the tips. So the first one is take practice tests to measure your progress and to see the challenges that you need to focus on. Then ask from an experienced friend or a tutor or a teacher to get evaluation, to give you evaluations for your speaking and writing, since they are not automatically scored. And then you need to focus on the challenges that you encounter during your practice, especially when the test day is approaching. So on the test day, you need to be both mentally and physically prepared. So you can be mentally prepared if you believe that you have done your effort, your best try, your best practices and preparation before the test. And then for your physical readiness, make sure you have a good sleep the night before the test and you have your breakfast before taking the test. Do not arrive late at the test venue so that you can get accustomed to the surroundings of the test, and you can set up your maybe your space more comfortably for the test. Prepare your ID card or passport, because that will be the required document for you to show to the test supervisor. And remember, do not take too many random items with you. Only take those that are allowed and will be beneficial for you. For example, a bottle of water in case you're thirsty, or spare pencils in case the ones provided by the test center are not good enough. All right, so that would be all for our first lesson in our TOEFL iBT preparation course. Thank you very much for joining me in this lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.